Testing, testing. Test 1, 2. Testing, testing. Test 1, 2. Still getting used to YouTube's format for streaming. And now I'm updating the web page post. I'm still not familiar with the embed process, because there's like a direct link to the live stream, and if you test stuff out, then it becomes no longer live, but the post still links to it unless you link to the channel URL, but it's a particular variant of the channel URL. It's all very weird. But I'm confident I'll be able to start at 1. Alright, so the web page post at Nicholas A. Pixels is working, and the stream is working, and we have 1 minute before we start chatting and sculpting. Alright, so this is the main character for 10,000 Dead Samurai. Still working on the menpo. You can go back to earlier videos and see some of the differences. This has taken on a couple directions and gone back and forth. The biggest issue for me is getting the mouth right. And by right, I mean looking good. It's not going to be anatomically correct, or, obviously it's a, and I'm probably going to repeat myself on this point, it's a, fantastical interpretation of the misinterpretation of a tiger. because this is, feudal Japan, and most people wouldn't have seen a tiger. Obviously photography is going to be limited. Artist renderings are always kind of weird and off during this time period. If you go and read Moby Dick, there's a chapter in it where Ishmael talks about the fact that nobody really knows what a whale looks like in terms of depicting it. And again, that's just, a sign of the times, not having the ability to accurately represent what something truly looks like. So it's twice removed from reality is what I'm saying. I'm going to come back to this point and try to explain it better. But basically, again, it's a fantastical representation of a misinterpretation of what a tiger looks like. If you see them snarled, they don't really have this many teeth. These canines are on the inside. They don't have rows of sharp teeth on the sides. It's just tiny teeth, 6 up and 6 down in the middle. But again, so the main difference was kind of the outline of the mouth, because this is going to be a focal point. The fur is all kind of organic, and it's less, to the eye, it deserves less scrutiny, because organic stuff is kind of random and wild, whereas this is definitely an outline, and so it has to have a certain amount of, I don't want to say perfection, but polish. So it's going to have to, the most important thing with a border like this in 3 dimensions is that it's the same width from all angles. Whenever you're doing hard surface modeling, that's an important thing. So you can see here, it looks narrower from this angle than it does from this angle. So it looks like these points here are narrower than they are from, a side-on view. And that's when you get good at bug hunting, you realize that's not because the border is actually narrowing there. It's because of a height difference that makes it look like it's narrowing at that particular point. So it looks like the border itself is narrower, but in reality, one edge is dipping down. It's not on the same plane. So a big part of what we have to do with this is get everything on the same plane, flowing in the same direction, at the same width, looking good from every angle. A lot of the stuff, I got a really good brush off ArtStation, I think it was, and so this stuff is, this is the finished product as far as I'm concerned. I'm gonna maybe accentuate some in some places and cut outlines in others, or at least experiment with doing that. So this model currently is in a weird state where some of it is completely finished and some of it is still in kind of a sketch mode. So if I had to enumerate the oh, yay, we have visitors. Hi, how are you? Also, who are you? Rainbow Mushroom Cloud, I'm guessing. I think I can guess. So the to-do list is to get the lips looking good. So basically, this is muzzle, this is gum. No, this is muzzle, this is lip, this is gum. We need to get the lips looking good. we need to smooth everything out. It's Chris, former student at SUNY Fredonia. And, you know, smooth out the stuff that needs to be smoothed out. And then, less fun than all that is some of these pieces that are just kind of really jutting out in the air here, like really bad overhangs. I want to create support systems for them and kind of give some sort of detail to the parts of the mask that no one's even going to see, because I kind of want to print. I want to try 3D printing this out. So that's our to-do list. I'm probably 90% of the way through this. I'm gonna get tired of it and switch over to doing something like the hat. So we'll see. Some of this is gonna be tedious, just working on the gums. I am not. I've done hard surface stuff before successfully, but if you've seen previous videos, you've seen how much I like agonized over masking everything and inflating it to get it just right, as if like, oh, now I'm done. Now I'll never have to mess with this again. I don't know what I was thinking. Again, I'm a game developer, not an artist at this point. So I'm doing the best I can under very difficult circumstances. It's from Train Spotting. I hope to get to the point where you know, I can just mask it off, inflate, and it's perfect, and I never have to touch it again. But that's not possible with the one-man workflow I currently have, because I don't have a concept artist. So in a way, I'm working through the concept as I sculpt the final product, which horribly inefficient, but you know, if I don't have a concept artist, I don't have a concept artist. And my 2D skills at this point have atrophied to the point where it would be useless for me to try to concept it in 2D and have that pay off in any sort of way. So what I'm doing basically, in order to determine the height and stuff, or the, you know, trying to level this out and get it looking machine perfect. Or I mean, realistically, what I'm trying to do is make it look like, you know, some Japanese craftsman who's been doing this his whole life has gotten it near perfect. In order to get everything on the same plane, I'm looking at the gradient of red. And if the gradient is subtle, that's good. If the gradient is very immediate, there's an immediate change in the color and the highlighting, that's bad. You want it to be subtle. Subtle means that the plane is on the same, you know, everything's on the same plane. All right, so if we look here, we have some failure in the geometry. Basically what I like to call a cave-in. So I've been doing too much pushing and pulling in that area, and it's destroying the geometry there. I'm working with Dynamesh, and with my upgrade, it's very easy to push things around at a resolution of 1024. So I can Dynamesh it nearly as much as I want without seeing any detrimental effects in the sculpt itself. So what I just did there was Dynamesh the mesh to, what Dynamesh does is it reconstructs the geometry. I think I should probably even, well, we're still in the concepting phase. We're not actually, I was gonna consider pushing up the Dynamesh resolution, because even though I can't see any perceptible difference in the sculpt, I feel like it's degrading every time I Dynamesh. I mean, it is to an insignificant degree, most likely, but it's one of those things I kind of worry about. So I'm using a smooth brush here, something I learned recently that amazed even veteran artists using ZBrush, is that we all know to smooth using the shift key, but if you hold the shift key down, it's actually a different algorithm than if you release the shift key and begin smoothing. So I'm hitting shift and then releasing it for the second, what I believe is a more ideal algorithm, smoothing algorithm. So that's one way to kind of average out the plane and get it at the same height. Another way will be to use a trim dynamic to kind of just bulldoze over everything, or trim adaptive, I forget which is the better of the two for something like this. And then H polish works well as well. So and then basically it's going to be my process is going to be smooth, trim dynamic and or adaptive, some H polish, and then rebuild the edges. And I'm just going to keep doing that until I get the results I want. I mean, that's kind of, again, I'm not an artist, so this is probably not the most efficient way to do things. Or if it is, you know, somebody with a bit more skill could do it a lot faster. So you can see already the gradient is a bit better, meaning that the surface is smoother, the transitions of the plane are less abrupt. But you can see as I use the trim dynamic, it's eroding the edges. And that's why I have to build those up. I think sometimes if I'm doing a real rough outline, I'll use the crease brush and invert it. Well, that is to say, when I use the crease brush, I first invert it and then invert it back again when I'm adding geometry. But at this point, it's probably a better idea to use the pinch tool. The good thing about like the crease and pinch tool is that it not only affects the edge, but it pulls some of the plane into alignment. Now, this is like an 18th century Japanese menpo plate. It's not a space helmet, so it doesn't have to be completely perfect. And towards the end, I'm gonna experiment with adding battle damage and some dents and stuff. So the level of polish that this needs is not the same as a more modern day item that hasn't been involved in uh, battle. Looks good, great detail. Thanks. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the design process a little later on. I think that's what really helps carry it when I do stuff, because my execution isn't always the best, but I think some of the design choices and stuff carry it maybe a bit more than they should, but so I'm going to talk about that process a little later on. How's the audio? Am I coming through? The other thing I'm going to have to do is sink these teeth more. So I'm going to mask this entire thing off and then just use the move brush to move them back, because I don't want the gums to come out past the lips. So that's on the to-do list too. I need to get this done in like 3 days, because there's a bunch of others. I got to work on the book. Yes, it's good. The audio, cool. Thanks. I got to work on the book. I want to do chess tactics, sculpting. I want to do Star Fox's sculpting. There's a lot I want and have to do. The other issue is we want to get this height semi-uniform. It's dipping and twisting and stuff. So you might expect it to change in height, but relative to the mask itself, it should be pretty uniform. And that sameness in height is going to help sell the notion that it's thick in every, the same width in every direction, from every angle rather. So see here, if we look at the silhouette, it's all over the place. Here it looks like, oh, it's pretty good. Here it's like, what the hell is going on? Are you ever going to see it from this angle? Nope. Still got to put in the work. didn't work. What is going on? This has to be the least exciting sculpt process to watch. So I think I'm gonna, when things aren't working, sometimes it's a good time to switch to a different brush. So I'm gonna, if you want smooth lines, it's a good idea to use a long lazy mouse. I'm gonna try to change the edge here with pinch. So you can see it's doing a couple of things. It's I'm able to kind of correct the line there so it's a little bit more smooth, but also it's pulling in geometry from the plane and kind of aligning it better. So you can see what I'm trying to do is at the spots here where it's waving up, I want to use the pinch tool to pull that down. So I'm cutting underneath it, and the pinch tool is pulling that down, and you know, some of the plane that resides next to it. So you can see the change in the geometry there. The unintended consequence, of course, is that there's a bit of a dip. But it's going to be easier for me to fix the dip than to fix the curvature of this edge in any other way. So, you know, sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Yes, I fixed the edge. Now I got to fix the plane. But this is the best way I know how to do that. So I'm trying to look for like the worst angle. How does this look the worst? And then go in and fix it. So I'm undercutting that bump. This, rather than undercutting this, which extends all the way from here to there, I'm going to pull the end edge up. And now you can see it's pulled up too much of the tooth. I'm going to have to go back through and dig it up. But that's kind of, I mean, that's what you got to do. This, because the geometry is getting so distorted, I'm going to have to run Dynamesh on this pretty soon. But this is a pretty good way to level things out and get that hard surface look. Rather than change the Z intensity again, I'm just pressing lighter. The other thing that's going to sell this is if, like this area, that has to be the height here of the gums has to be equal. So we're going to have to bulldoze over all this and create a crease in there. Same thing here. I got to push the teeth back eventually. Originally those teeth were a separate mesh, and I thought I could work on them separately and position them separately and get it to work, but it didn't really. Let's go back to pinch real quick. Boy, I hope I have symmetry on. That would have sucked if I didn't. How far can I undo? We just did an autosave, so I don't think I'm going to break anything. But I just want to see a before and after. So this is the this is the before. Obviously, I'm just kind of sculpting out some of the areas and outlines, and this is where we're at after half an hour. So we're getting there, I guess. Let's move the teeth back now. Or at least, yeah, let's move them back. So again, as far as like envisioning what I wanted this to look like originally, everything was pretty clear to me. And of course, when I got these brushes, it became even clearer what I wanted to do. But in terms of the muzzle, I knew what I wanted to do. And, I didn't want an actual muzzle. I wanted these crazy spikes that kind of were teeth in and of themselves. I knew I wanted, these huge canines from the top to the bottom. And I know I wanted to put, do some weirdness by putting the lower canines outside of the inner canines or the top canines to stress that it's a visual cue that it's a little bit off, it's a little bit wonky, it's fantastical, and the people who have made this, probably haven't seen a tiger in person. So I knew I wanted to do all that, and I knew I wanted the mouth to extend out here, like again, just for the fantastical aspect. But I wasn't entirely sure what shape it should take. I didn't want something that looked comical, because it's an exaggeration. So anytime you do like really big exaggerations, there's the potential for it to become comical, which I didn't want. So I think between the last stream and this one, I did a little work on it, and I had the lip go out to a second corner here, and then straight up, and I kind of like that, and I'm a little disappointed I didn't have more courage to keep that, but I thought it was maybe a bridge too far in terms of the fantastical aspect. I mean, who has two corners in their mouth? But then I thought about rationalizing it. If this giant tooth was kind of pushing on the lip, you could kind of have two corners. But then I got a better idea, which was to have this tooth come out, overlap, and so it kind of bookends. So it kind of echoes this tooth, but in an opposite manner, nearly opposite. I mean, they're curved in the same way, but it serves as a nice visual bookend to this tooth. And aesthetically, what you want a lot of times are these opposing rhythms. So you've got the tooth pointing up here, and then at the other end, the tooth pointing down. Now, ideally, you might want it facing the other way, curving towards the front. But which, if I didn't have to mesh it in with these, I would do. But it's more important in this instance to mesh with these teeth. And then, to kind of counterbalance the rhythms there, you have just straight up and down teeth here, which I quite like too, because it kind of calls to mind Darth Vader's mask. So sometimes you want to hit upon those touchstones, that are already out there in terms of design. Also, functionally, you want to think about how this guy has to breathe. And right now, he's only able to breathe out through the front and through the nose holes there. So that's the reasoning behind that. And you're probably going to hear me repeat these things as I find a better, more eloquent way to express them. Like, I'll probably have a blog post on my design choices. So all we've done is we masked off the teeth, we inverted the mask, and now we're pushing the teeth back. This has the unintended consequence of making the lip seem like it's jutting out a lot further, which I should have anticipated. Now that's going to need more work. It also has the unintended consequence of, it looks like it's messing up some of the geometry here and flattening those teeth out too. So we're going to have to rebuild the teeth, do something about or maybe not. No, we're going to have to do something about the lips. I was very conscientious that I wanted to make this lip thicker up here, and I didn't realize that. You know what? Let's start over and and try to center the move tool a bit higher. Alright, so that we won't have to rework that as much, I don't think. Well, I'll probably wind up just masking off the lip and pushing that in a bit. A good thing to do too is to every so often apply a different material, because different materials are going to give you different insights. Now, if you've already locked in a material via going up here, MRGB, you go to color, fill object. If you already have a material locked in permanently like that, you can turn it off by hitting that paintbrush, and now anything you select will be applied. So ultimately, the material I envision is going to be a bronze colored metal. And so you can see, I mean, everything kind of looks better in matte cap red wax. I don't know why that is. The gold is too shiny, but it has a metallic luster, which I hope to emulate in the final product. So, you know, every once in a while I like to get a sense of how it looks in gold. I like to get a sense of how it looks in metallic. This is much nicer. The gold is a little bit too bright. Again, in terms of design, you have to think about, you know, can this character afford an all gold mask? Does it make sense to wear an all gold mask for anything other than ceremony? Like if you're going into battle, it's going to get damaged. So it's color wise, it'll probably be, you know, like a red brown or something. I'm not good with colors, so I'll just wind up like selecting something from a picture I see. But again, you get to see different aspects get highlighted. So for example, I want to do some like cartoon rendering, and if you apply frame to it, there's a couple different frames. You get kind of a sense of what it would look like in cell shading. The sketch especially will do that. But additionally, it shows you just how, you know, you might think, oh, this is smooth enough, but it also kind of elucidates just how rough your rough sculpt is. Also, the shading here, the gradient is a lot more abrupt with this type of render, so you can get a better sense of just how dire this dip is, and how, you know, not level it is. Basically, try a bunch of different renders, because each one is going to have a different way of showing off the best features, but more importantly, exposing the flaws and what you need to work on. So obviously this is just like rough work still on the teeth, but to get a better idea of what it should look like, I'm going to go in and smooth some of it out anyways. again, if you hold down shift while you're smoothing, it gives you one algorithm. If you let go, it gives you another. I think the one where you let go is a bit more aggressive. It smooths things out a lot quicker. But at the, you have less control and less subtlety over the process. Again, the geometry, you can see anytime you do anything very anytime you do anything drastic, it's going to screw up the geometry. So we're going to have to go in here and Dynamesh. Dynamesh is so great. Just about everything in ZBrush is real great, except for the UI is very quirky. And I still haven't figured out the fur brushes and stuff. I have no idea how to do hair. None. That's why I stick to anime characters. I don't know if I can finish this in 3 days. I mean, it is kind of like, it's super important in terms of characterization. It's going to be, in any of the cutscenes, this is what you're going to be looking at the entire time. But at the same time, I'm a big believer that perfection is the enemy of progress. And, sometimes you just got to move on. Which I think my new strategy of like abandoning things at like 90% and then working on something else is a good idea. Like get everything to 90% and then you can really start to triage what's important. All right. So in terms of showing us what's wrong, this material has kind of served its usefulness. We're going to go back to Madcap Red. Wax. We're going to turn the red down. And I'm trying to visualize what that other material was telling us vis-a-vis the gums here and the gradient. So yeah, I'm going to push this in, but before I do that, I'm going to mask it off. And we're going to have to add a lazy mouse to it. Thanks. Yeah, I saw that game. There's another samurai game coming out. Or that is coming out. I can't keep them straight. I shouldn't be buying any more games anyways. I don't have time to... I hate saying that. Because it seems like a cop-out. That might be the one I'm thinking of. There was a samurai game I really wanted. I got Alien Isolation recently, and I'm pretty disappointed at a lot of the game dev choices. I'm going to do a little video about why they're bad. Somebody suggested that the things I was criticizing weren't bad, they were red herrings. But at the same time, like, I think we're all over subversion of expectation, or like really bad subversion of expectation. That second new Star Wars did a lot of that in like just the absolute worst way. For example, I mean, the whole movie was basically Empire Strikes Back played in reverse. So you have the Battle of Hoth, but to subvert your expectations, one of the rebels puts his finger in the snow and tastes it, and he says, "Oh, it's salt." It's not snow, it's salt. Your expectations have been subverted. Well, I'm not sure that's good enough. One of my favorite parts in The Force Awakens was when they were like going through this lengthy description of the new Death Star, and somebody in the back yells out, "Just call it a Death Star." And in my mind, it's the voice of that guy from like the bystander in Futurama. I can't do his voice very well, but yeah, it was just. At least they copped to it in that instance. They're like, okay, yeah, I know. It's a frame for frame reshoot of the original A New Hope, which it was. In the first one, they're searching for plans. You know, R2-D2 is smuggling plans. And in The Force Awakens, R2-D2 is smuggling plans. And, you know, there's 100 other examples like that. Solo was good. I know I said I was going to push that back, but I'm going to go through with a pinch brush first. And I'm going to do a good job of it this time. Destroy, create, destroy, create. That's the process. Rogue One was basically someone's Star Wars RPG D&D campaign. Yeah. That's a good description. They should just have the Marvel writers do all the movies now. Like, whatever it is, just hire them. All right. I think I'm ready to go in with H polish. You know what? Let me move in this tooth a little bit more. Let's try H polish. Basically, H polish, like trim dynamic is, if you want to just drag with lazy mouse and bulldoze everything, you use trim dynamic, trim adaptive. If you want to like scrub back and forth, if you have like an urge to like scrub a plane until it's at the right level, H polish is your best bet. It has a pretty aggressive effect on edges too, so that can be a good thing or a bad thing depending on whether you're aware of it and it's eliciting the effects you want. I guess that's true for anything. All right, Chris, take care. Thanks for stopping by. Man, this is a lot harder than I think anything I've ever sculpted. Like these lips have, it seems like this is all I've actually worked on. Like laying in the fur was like, ta-da, I'm done. I've worked on space helmets that were, you know, a lot easier. H polish does a really good job though. This is very close to what I wanted.
But if you're not going to the bathroom, you need to get out. Brad, I'm serious, because I gotta use the bathroom. Serious, if you're not using the bathroom, get out. Okay, alright. Just get out. Kramer just brought hot dogs and french fries. See? Go eat.
And back to pinch. Straighten out some of these edges. Make them a little more crisp. Pinch is another one where you can make you can drag it you're almost scrubbing as long as you go in one direction. That's too big. You can see how it's pulling from the other side. And we're getting to the point where we're going to have to dynamesh again. Let's see how I'm always interested in seeing how screwed up the geometry gets. I don't know why. I would save time if I wasn't doing that. What? What the hell? How do I sharpen a mask? It's supposed to be Control-Alt, right? But it's doing invert. Oh, okay. Alt-Shift? No. Control-Shift? Oh, it's got to be in the mesh. I forget. Again, not a ZBrush artist. That's a weird artifact. Alright, so I'm going to go through here with clay tubes and invert it, kind of cut away some of the mesh. I'm going to go even more aggressive and use clay buildup, inverted. And we're going to have to dynamesh again. What I well, no, that wouldn't have worked. I was going to say what I should have done is created a copy that I could then project after all the dynameshing was done, but obviously there would be too many changes for that to be useful. So before I go any further with the teeth themselves, I'm going to have to make a decision about how deep I want, how far I want the lips to extend inward. So we're going to bulldoze. Losing some nice fur detail in the process. I'm just gonna turn my draw size down, zoom in a bit. You know what? I'm gonna use the crease brush first. ZBrush is freezing for some reason. All right. So as I said, I always set the crease brush to sub as the default. And basically I'm just kind of defining the line and the depth of where I want the lips to end here. And I'm slightly changing angles so I can see if the cuts look good from every angle. And there's something else I've seen here that I want to correct with pinch. Sometimes I basically use the pinch brush as a move tool that pulls. That's not, you know, a bad way to think of it sometimes. I wish there were a thing where you could like just draw in a spline and have edges line up along the spline. That would be a great feature. Why don't they have that? And then also, in addition to that, create a plane across it. I guess that's what the retopology thing is, but you're creating a whole separate mesh. Instead of creating a whole separate mesh, it would be awesome if the pixels just aligned to it. Maybe there is something like that. There should be. We're going to scrub with H-Polish a bit, see what that gets us. We're starting to get the dimensions that we want and the curvature and stuff that we want. It's going to take a lot more time though than I expected. Okay. Obviously going to have to mask this a bit. So I'm trying to make the height match up here. I mean, the edges are way too wavy yet, but everything else seems to be falling into order. Falling into place. Why is this? It's like not even adding. I'm really excited for the non-photorealistic rendering. I keep seeing all these YouTubers are like, oh, it's gimmicky, blah, 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 blah. No, it's something I need. It looks like it makes, why? Oh. It looks like it makes super excellent cartoon style, comic book even. Because cell shading is pretty easy. It's, you know, to make it look like it's a cartoon, but to make it look like it's a comic book, something else. And the new MPR renderer looks like it does it very well. So because I've already seen like a samurai type fantasy character rendered using it, and it looks beautiful, and I'm very excited about getting this to a finished state and rendering it in the same manner, seeing what I get. Sometimes like the crease tool is very good for like drawing in like guidelines as if you're working on something in 2D. I've done hard surface stuff before, and I don't remember it being this difficult. Like it's gonna take me the entire 2 hours to get this one small tract of lip the way I want it. And that's kind of like the greatest evidence that I'm no longer an artist, is the time it takes me. Because I've always said, I've told my students this too. Like anybody can paint the Sistine Chapel. You can, I can, and make it as good or better than what Michelangelo did. But only he could do it in a lifetime. Like it would just, that's kind of people don't really understand or acknowledge what a factor is, how big a factor time is, and whether you're good at something or not. So again, here it looks like, oh, what a smooth, easy transitioning arc we've got going there. And then you turn here and it's like, oh, no, we've been deceived. So you can see that the pinch brush is kind of failing to get the effect I want, and that's probably due to the geometry being so screwed up in that area. And you can see indeed the geometry is screwed up in that area. As I've been pulling from right to left, I've also been pulling from bottom to top too. You do something good in one angle and it has negative effects in another. So pinch might not be the best idea in this area, in this instance. Did I just Dynamesh? Looks like I did. I'm concerned that I'm losing stuff in Dynamesh. I'm going to crank it up to 2048. think I've got enough horsepower. Part of my New Year's resolution was to do a quad annual computer upgrade, and I accomplished that. Although at what cost? Because I had to sacrifice a bunch of hardware I'd been holding on to, including a couple of really nice video cards. Let's average this out with smooth to begin with. Take some of the edge off. Literally. Get it? Nobody's here. Disheartening is a word I use a lot these days. It is absolutely disheartening how long this takes to get it right. I'm very close to getting it right, and I think it's a good idea if I leave it alone for now and move on to another element. Maybe the teeth, because if I get those wrong, then the lips are going to be wrong again. Or even if I get them right, it might affect the lips in ways I did not anticipate. it feels like since I've increased my resolution, the smooth brush is not, the strength isn't there. Which of course is the case if you subdivide, but I don't know why it would be any different with Dynamesh. So I guess it's not. But I'm just now noticing that. So previously when I was sketching these out, I was using clay tubes, which is my favorite. But now that I want everything, now that I'm working towards a final product, I'm going to use the standard brush, I think. Because that's the best tool for the job at this point, I think. I have real nice twisty lips and gums here, and I hope to achieve the same thing there, but I'm not so sure. And I've just noticed that these two parts have Dynamesh together, which I'm not sure is such a bad thing, but it's another one of those things I didn't mean to do, and that causes me some stress. Sometimes, you know, things you don't intend will end up being better than the things you do. Alright, so just by virtue of... Oop, I am destroying that edge, aren't I? No? Just by virtue of smoothing things over, they look better. And the fact that they're kind of hazy and you can kind of project what you want to see upon them makes them even better. Makes them look even better. Sometimes a sketch is better than the final product, I find, for that reason. It's a big reason people prefer the book to the movie a lot of the time. Well, first of all, when people say they prefer the book, what they're doing is bragging about reading. But secondly, what they're saying is that they prefer their vision to what the director has accomplished. It's not necessarily about the book being better. It's about the person saying that they're better. These teeth have gotten away from me. Alright, so we've got the outline and already it looks better, but of course the highlights belie the fact that the shape is not good. it's becoming obvious that if I want to finish this, I'm just going to have to put in more hours. What? No. Why is there no cancel? I don't know how to deal with this. What the hell was that? Get a cancel, ZBrush. Your UI sucks. I'm going to start a new series called Your UI Sucks. And just talk about why everybody's UI sucks. Because everybody's UI sucks. And like I see ads for like UI or UX developers or however they want to phrase it. What? They're well paying. So you would think there would be some improvement in UI over the years. But there hasn't been. I wonder to what extent software developers do testing the same way like game development studios do, like bringing in actual people to like try to figure out the puzzles. In this case, not game puzzles, but actual UI puzzles. I'm still not sure if I want these teeth to be completely smooth or have striations in them, like you see, especially predominant in like shark's teeth. I know all teeth, it seems, I don't know, but it seems to me all teeth have, uh, visible striations in them a lot of the time. In sharks, it seems especially prevalent. And I kind of like the look I'm getting with these strips of trim dynamic bulldozing trails. It gives a sense that the material is, pounded from metal in a way that like completely smooth tooth representation wouldn't. All right. using the standard brush to put in the gums was a mistake. I should have used my favorite brush, clay tubes. Because you get a nice lip. Not literally, but I mean you get a nice additional edge. That works too. Okay, I made a mistake. Wait, I'm making the same mistake, aren't I? So this contours down like this. I want it to go in the opposite direction, I guess. Sometimes when you really don't get the results you expected, it's you're using the wrong brush, or there's problems with the geometry and you need to Dynamesh again. I mean, really, I'm probably being too optimistic about building up this much clay, you know, without Dynameshing a couple times to get it all on solid ground again. I think it's going to be interesting. I'm going to have this one as smooth as possible in terms of planes and the edges. And then this I'm going to have follow the curvature of the teeth. I've accomplished kind of the same thing here. The bottom lip is very hard plane, and the top lip is a little bit more organic. This is a straight line. This is up and down. I think I'm going to continue that here as best I can. You always want, I mean, you don't always want, but contrast is a lot of time aesthetically pleasing. And you know, these are basically, the teeth are basically contrasting rhythms. And then you have the contrast, hard surface down here, more organic up top. This is shaping up pretty well. Um, Obviously, I'm not happy with the time it has taken. Uh, but the results are I'm getting so far, make me optimistic about the final product. I bought on ArtStation. Uh, there's only so much you can get pretty crazy with your interpretation of samurai armor, but it all builds off a very familiar structure. So for the armor and stuff, I just bought a bunch of insert tools off of ArtStation. Artists will think that's cheating. That's okay. I'm not an artist. I'm a game developer. So anytime I can buy a base model reasonably priced, I'll do that. So I've got a bunch of essentially insert meshes that I'll be using for the armor. So hopefully, it will speed up the process. What kind of gains I'll get, I don't know, especially since I'm concepting as I go. So this is going to take at least one more day to get it up to 90%. By 90%, I mean more or less to a point where I could put it in the game and not feel too bad about it. Kind of a minimum viable product, maybe maybe improve upon the model and offer it as DLC, free of course, later on. So I'm going to do this part. I'm going to do the in-between areas up top here too. And then I'm going to have to move on to something else. And like I said, I'll get all the parts to 90% complete. And then I'll be able to triage what needs to get done, what I can leave as good enough, because eventually you gotta ship. That's the biggest lesson I think I've learned. Especially when you're working on your own. Whoa, that's the first time we've moved up to 2048. We've got 23 gigabytes of free memory. We shouldn't have any. I want ZBrush to use it all. It should be anticipating my every move. It should be nearly sentient, completing my work for me. All this wasted memory. I can never remember how much memory I have in this computer. Obviously, if there's 23 free, it's 32. And for some reason, to my mind, that doesn't seem like enough, but at the same time, ZBrush isn't even using all of it. Should have 64. Part of the reason for the upgrade was my laptop and my desktop are basically the same configuration. But for some reason, my laptop could see the network attached storage, but my desktop couldn't. And I mean, this is something I wrestled with for months, and I tried every solved forum post that I came across because I needed to be able to connect the desktop to the NAS to back up my work. And I was running NAS for free on it. It was maddening. I could not get it to work. So obviously it was more likely to be a Windows issue than a hardware issue. But I figured I'd do everything at the same time. And so I ran a fresh install of Windows, and it still didn't see the network attached storage. So I tried switching from NAS for free to free NAS. Still couldn't see the network attached storage. And something made me think something had happened during the fresh install, so I did another fresh install. Still didn't work. So I switched over to FreeNAS, and still had a bunch of networking problems. But FreeNAS has a lot better support than NAS for free, I think, at this point. And eventually, by RTFMing and watching FreeNAS's tutorials, YouTube tutorials, I was able to get it working. And I was so happy because this thing had been going on for a month. Finally, I encountered a thread where people were having the same problem as me. Like, they had upgraded to, like, my NAS installation dates back to when I was using Windows 7. And it worked. And it worked throughout some of Windows 10. And then it just stopped working. Why my laptop was able to see it on the network, I still don't know. Eventually it didn't, but it didn't seem to come by way of any Windows upgrades. However, everybody in the thread was saying the same thing at a certain point in their Windows histories. Their installations just stopped working. I think that was true with NAS for free and FreeNAS, but FreeNAS just powered through it and kept updating until everything was good again. And NAS for free was more or less abandoned. I shouldn't say that because I don't really know what the state of the community is. But when I did have to consult them, it seemed very much like they were running network attached storage for the sake of running network attached storage, like it was a pet or a hobby. Like it didn't seem like it was super important that it worked for the purposes of actually storing data and accessing it. As an end user would typically do. Anyways, long story short, so the hardware upgrade was part of this whole refresh, reinstall, fresh start for the new year. And so far it seems like a lateral move. I went with an AMD processor instead of Intel for like the first time ever. And the video card I have is super deluxe for my budget anyways. But I haven't really noticed any gains. Obviously, if ZBrush isn't taking full use of the hardware, you're not, whether there's 23 gigabytes of free memory or 18, you're not going to really see the difference between that, because that's the bottleneck in terms of performances. But like the save times seem not to have improved. Load times seem pretty much the same. Certain functions in ZBrush seem to take just as long. So I don't know. I could just be imagining things too. Anyways, I'm still glad that I accomplished all that. Work on the network attached storage was supposed to be finished in January as part of my New Year's resolutions, but that spilled over into February, well into February here. But thankfully, it's done. I can back up and have backed up a lot of my information. And now I can get back to the process of creating and working rather than preparing for work. All right, so this is very nearly finished. This little stretch here is very nearly finished. That's 2 hours of solid work. The only time I took a break was to sip from my pop can when autosave was happening. I'm going to have to get up and do some Ring Fit adventure, and then I'm going to cook a bunch of tacos, and then I really have to work on the book. I'm not too excited about that, but it's got to be done. All right, 3 o'clock on the dart, on the 3 o'clock on the nose. Yep, that's all we accomplished. This is a little bit, and some work on the teeth. How far back can we go to see where we're at? I want to do a before and after. Okay, so this is not the very beginning. That's probably about midway through. You know what? I think I'm gonna cook tacos first and then do the ring fit thing. I haven't taken my 20 pills yet today. So that's what an hour of work on this looks like. I hate having to get, the hard surface stuff perfect because I don't. There seems like there should be a better way. Like you should be able to do like a retopologize, like a manual retopologizing by placing polygons and then just having the sculpt snap to that. Like it should be that easy. That would take 30 minutes. Not even. That would to do this piece. If I were to retopologize it and have the mesh just fill the retopology, 5 minutes, right? All right. Anyways, it's looking good, and that's what's important. Thank you for watching, and see you later.